Hello viewers and investors. Welcome to another episode of Outlook Money's Investment Made Easy webinar series. This episode is spearheaded by LIC Mutual Fund. Today's topic of discussion is multi-cap fund. What is it and how should investor approach it? A multi-cap fund, as the name suggests, invest in stocks across market capitalization. You can say this is a three-in-one fund, as it gives you a flavor of all market capitalization in one single fund. Today we get to know in details from our expert. I am Kundan Kishore, Deputy Editor, Outlook Money, your host for this session. And I am delighted to welcome Mr. Amit Nadikar, Senior Fund Manager Equity, LIC Mutual Fund, who will throw some light on the strategy one should adopt for investing in multi-cap funds. Mr. Nadikar has over 15 years of experience in portfolio management and equity research. Prior to joining LIC Mutual Fund, he was with Alchemy Capital. Welcome, Mr. Nadikar. It is a pleasure to have you here for our show.
Thank you for having me, Tor.
Yes, sir. So let me begin with the question straight away. Could you please explain to our viewer what is multi-cap fund and how it works?
Sure. See, as the name suggests, multi-cap funds are the funds where, there is a very good representation of, stocks across the market caps, right? So minimum 75% of the investment needs to be done in equities and equity related investments at any one point of time, right?
Right.
Beyond that, there's a mandate that minimum 25% must be invested into large cap, minimum 25% must be invested into mid cap, and minimum 25% must be invested into small caps. The balance 25% is at the discretion of the fund manager, where he sees the best risk rewards. I think that's where he would invest in the balance rewards.
Okay. So, but how do you manage the remaining 25% in this fund, sir?
Like I said, it could be a fundamental different approach, and across this market cap spectrum, wherever the fund manager finds the best opportunities, I think he will add those opportunities to his portfolio.
Okay, but sir, the question is why should one consider investing in multi-cap funds when there are separate categories of funds that are available in the market, like pure large cap fund, pure mid cap funds, pure small cap funds? So why should choose this? Why should one consider investing in multi-cap fund?
Sure. So see, different categories provide you a different profile of risk and returns. So suppose you plot on a graph. Let's say on an x-axis you plot returns, on a y-axis you plot risk, right? And then you'll get a dot about every fund. So let's say large cap provide list of the risk, but returns could be relatively less, right? If you move on to the next category, which is Flexicap fund, right? I think the returns are superior to large cap funds, but also there is a higher risk because they would invest across the market cap, right? Now, if you move to the next category, and which is where we are, the category we are discussing, multi-cap, right? Now the multi-caps have a minimum 25% in each categories. So basically 25% in mid cap and 25% small cap would add a higher 50% allocation beyond large cap, right? So that category has a higher risk, but also higher return potential. And beyond that, if you move to mid cap and small cap, the risk return increases in that proportion, right? So I hope I am able to give you a fair understanding about why one should look at the different categories. It depends upon the risk return profile one is looking at.
Right. Sir, you rightly mentioned about the Flexicap, but there is confusion among investors about the Flexicap and multi-cap funds, because investors think that Flexicap they also invest in multi-cap stocks, and similarly multi-cap fund also invest in multi-cap. Across the market caps. But is there any catch or is there any major difference between Flexicap and multi-cap fund?
Sure, I think that's a very good question, right? Theoretically, what you are saying is correct, right? But if you look at the reality, right? What happens that the Flexicap has a benchmark which is NSE 500, and NSE 500. If you look at the composition of various market caps, then large caps dominate around 75% plus, right? The mid cap, exposure in the benchmark NSE 500 is around, I think, 89%. This would vary depending upon as the market cap movement happens, right? And the small cap would be, 8-9%, right? So theoretically, yes, you are right. But in reality, the weight of, large cap is as high as that 75%. And the collective weight of mid cap and small cap is as low as, probably 20-25%, correct?
Right.
If you now compare that with a multi-cap, which by definition or by mandate, minimum 25% exposure must be maintained to the small and mid cap, gives you far better opportunity to generate, probably potentially higher return, of course, at a higher risk, right? So that's a distinction between, the multi-cap and flexi-cap.
Okay. So
Yes.
what kind of investors should consider investing in multi-cap fund? I mean, the investor should be who is very aggressive on taking risk, or moderate risk appetite investor can also invest in multi-cap funds.
So like we discussed, the multi-cap category has a different, risk return profile, correct?
Right.
So an investor who believes, it's very difficult to time the market, and don't want to time it, when would, large cap would do better versus, let's say, a small cap or mid cap, or when would, mid cap would do better versus small cap and, large cap, would have a minimum 25% exposure in each of these categories, right? So there's a great diversification which he will also achieve through this, right? So on one hand, the large caps gives you, stability to the portfolio. On the other hand, the small caps gives an opportunity to generate, extra alpha, right? So
Right.
an investor who's, mature, has a long-term horizon of, let's say, at least 3 to 5 years, right? And looking at, better risk return profile should definitely consider multi-cap as a category.
Okay. But sir, when we talk about the alpha, and especially being the multi-cap fund, the universe is very big, because you have to deal with all around 3,500 stocks, right?
Right.
So in that case, the stock picking acumen of the fund manager is very crucial. So how do you see this?
Absolutely right. Right. Bang on. The SEBI has defined, the top 100 as a large cap and next 150 as, the mid caps. So beyond, first 250, it's ocean out there, right? And it's a fund manager's ability to, select right stocks will determine, how good a fund would do, or, how good the alpha is able to generate. I think, and that's where, our or any funds, investment philosophy, a process, a disciplined approach would come to play. And like, you said, it's then the fund manager's ability to select the right stock, construct a right portfolio and manage the risk well will determine whether he can consistently deliver, good returns.
Okay. So what are the factors one should consider before investing in multi-cap funds?
Like I mentioned, first and foremost, he should have a reasonable time horizon, at least 3 to 5 years of time horizon. Then he should understand, the exposure to mid and small cap would be much higher, right? And with that comes the volatility, right? So he should, be ready to take that volatility, right? So risk return metric, he should be very clear about, correct? And once he's sorted out on that, right, then it's something that, I mean, there are many more things probably, which there is not much time to discuss, but of course, and the philosophy of the the fund house, the fund manager and his track record, and of course, distinct features which would be separating one scheme versus another in the same category, right, are some of the things which one should look at before selecting the multi-cap fund.
So what would be your suggestion for the investors now in this current volatile market? Is it a good time to invest in a multi-cap funds, or it's a all-weather fund?
See, like I certainly mentioned, right, timing the market consistently, right, is
Yes.
next to impossible, right? And therefore, one should not get into market timing. And, if you have a right time horizon, right? And then, the starting point is not so much of a relevance or a concern, right? So we believe, any point of time is the right point of time to invest into equities, given you have, long-term time horizon, right? Um, and at the end of the day, you should, stick to your discipline, savings or through SIP or right allocation to the equities, and, have a right asset allocation done before that. And then, market timing is not very, important.
Great. Great insight, sir. Great.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So with this, we come to the end of today's episode of Investment Made Easy on Multicap Funds. Thank you, Mr. Nadikar, for joining us today. Viewers, we hope you enjoyed our conversation today. Please don't forget to share your comments and feedback on this episode. You can also share your suggestions and questions at later@outlookmoney.com. We will be back with our next edition soon. Till then, stay safe, stay invested, and keep following Outlook Money. Thank you.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.